The 1980s were the golden age of Japanese motorcycles, a wild era where manufacturers threw everything at the wall. These are the 17 Japanese motorcycles from the 80s that don't just hold their own today. They crush modern bikes, often with half the parts and twice the attitude. And if you think number one is predictable, you're in for a twist because one of these bikes is still terrorizing track days in 2025. Number 17, Yamaha RZ350. Forget your traction control. Forget your lean angle sensors. Back in the 80s, if you wanted to go fast, you needed just 2 strokes, a kickstart, and nerves of pure titanium. This Yamaha was the lightweight underdog that walked into the ring with leader bikes and left with their lunch money. But here's what really made it special. It was light, like around 320 pounds light. That meant razor-sharp handling, flickability that made sport bike riders jealous, and a sense of control that modern bikes can't match because they're all carrying 30 extra pounds of tech and ego. Owners today call it the most fun you can have below 80 horsepower. They rebuild it, restore it, race it, and most importantly, they never sell it. Because once you've owned an RZ350, everything else feels a little too tame. Still think you need a giant sport bike to scare yourself silly? The next motorcycle proved you could get advanced engineering, homologation street legality, and race DNA for the price of a used hatchback. Now, hold on. Number 16 is about to go full throttle. We're just getting started. Number 16, Kawasaki ZX10. Before the modern ZX10R was burning up superbike grids, there was this beast, the Kawasaki ZX10. Born in the late 80s, this was Kawasaki's final word on pure inline 4 performance before electronics started taking over. And boy, what a final word it was. Introduced in 1988, the original ZX10 was an absolute juggernaut. It packed a 998cc liquid-cooled inline 4, DOHC, fuel-fed animal that pushed out around 135 horsepower, and that was a real 135, back when horsepower was unfiltered and unapologetic. But here's what made it truly special. Despite its size, it was butter-smooth, comfortable, and stable as a freight train at speed. It wasn't just about crazy top-end numbers. It was actually usable. You could tour on it, commute on it, or blast canyons on the weekend. It was a hyper bike without the hyper attitude. Riders who owned it back in the day remember it as the bike that made you feel like you had just been promoted to fighter pilot. Twist the throttle and the front end would get light. Keep twisting and the horizon came at you like a punch. Even in today's world of ride-by-wire and IMU-controlled everything, the original ZX10 still feels wild and free. No ABS, no modes, just you, the wind, and 1,000 angry cubic centimeters begging to go faster. If you followed this gist right until here, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, tell us in the comments which bikes you think will be on this list. Think this was big? There is a bike that didn't just look like a blade, it sliced through the entire motorcycle world and started fights that still rage today. Number 15, Suzuki Katana 1100. Back in 1981, Suzuki did something completely insane. They let German-designed house target design go wild on a concept motorcycle. The result? The Suzuki GSX-1100S Katana, a machine so aggressive, so futuristic, and so brutally beautiful that it made people angry, obsessed, and jealous all at once. Underneath the radical bodywork was a very real, very angry 1100cc air-cooled inline 4, pulled straight from the GSX 1100 platform. It pumped out around 108 horsepower, but forget the number. It felt like a solid punch in the chest from a robot every time you twisted the throttle. What made the Katana stand out most wasn't just its performance. It was the design that looked 50 years ahead, even if it handled like it was 20 years behind. The rectangular headlight, the chopped front fender, the sculpted tank and tail, it was as if a blade had become a motorcycle. Today, collectors fight over clean examples. And even though Suzuki reissued a modern Katana, it still doesn't touch the original's insane energy. The old one didn't care about comfort or electronics. It was about looking cool and riding even cooler. Riders still say it best. When you park a Katana, it doesn't matter what else is in the lot. People walk over to stare at it. If you ever wanted to own a motorcycle that started arguments just by existing, this is it. But if you think the Katana was intense, the next bike stripped everything down, dropped the weight, and proved that less can be way more, especially when it comes with a big single-cylinder punch to the ribs. Number 14, Yamaha SRX600. In a world of inline fours screaming to redline, turbochargers flexing on highways, and sport bikes covered in plastic, Yamaha did something straight up ballsy. They went back to basics and built the Yamaha SRX600, one cylinder. No fairings, no nonsense, just riding, raw and real. Launched in 1985, the SRX600 was Yamaha's answer to a question no one was asking. What if a big single could take on a sport bike? And the answer shocked everyone. This bike came with a 600cc air-cooled single-cylinder engine lifted from the XT off-road family, but tuned for the streets. It made a modest 45 horsepower, but don't let that number fool you. With a curb weight of under 390 pounds, this thing was lighter than a cup of coffee and faster than most people expected. But here's the thing, the SRX was ahead of its time. Most buyers in the 80s wanted full-fared race replicas, not minimalist cafe-inspired torque machines. So sales were modest. And that's why today, finding a clean SRX 600 feels like discovering a secret recipe for pure riding joy. One longtime owner put it best, "I've owned faster bikes, flashier bikes, more expensive bikes, but nothing ever felt as fun or honest as the SRX." And now the teaser, the next bike on our list brought in V4 madness, a howl that echoed through racetracks, and a level of balance that made riders whisper about it for decades. Number 13, Honda VFR 750F. In the 80s, Honda had a problem. They wanted to dominate the sport bike world, but they did not want to do it the same way as everyone else. So instead of relying on boring inline fours, they went full mad scientist and unleashed the Honda VFR 750F, a bike that did not just change the game, it redesigned the entire playbook. Released in 1986, the VFR 750F, also known by its legendary model code RC24, came armed with a 748cc V4 engine that sounded like a small fighter jet with the grudge. Smooth, precise, mechanical perfection. It made around 75 horsepower, but it was never about the peak numbers. It was about the balance, the sound, and the feeling. This was Honda at its absolute best. Gear-driven cams for durability, and that signature V4 whine, a rock-solid chassis, suspension that handled both commuting and canyon carving like a pro, and a style that was subtle but serious, like the motorcycle equivalent of a James Bond tux. But here is where it really gets wild. The VFR 750F was so reliable, so over-engineered, that many of them are still running perfectly today, even after more than 100,000 miles. Riders tell stories about putting in minimal maintenance and getting years of flawless performance. No oil leaks, no weird electrical gremlins, just a steady hum and a whole lot of grins. But do not think Honda stopped here. The next bike took the V4 obsession even further with more power, more tech, more edge, and wrapped it in a body made for speed. Number 12, Kawasaki Z1000R Eddie Lawson replica. The year was 1982. Hair was big, jeans were tight, and the king of AMA superbike racing was a guy named Eddie Lawson, tearing up tracks on a green Kawasaki. To celebrate his dominance, Kawasaki did something brilliant and ballsy. They built a limited edition replica of his race bike and put it in showrooms. Enter the Kawasaki Z1000R Eddie Lawson replica, one of the rarest, meanest, and most collectible bikes of the entire decade. Right off the bat, this thing looked like trouble. That bright lime green paint, flat handlebars, bikini fairing, and gold wheels said one thing: I win, you watch. And underneath that glorious green skin was Kawasaki's proven 998cc inline four, lifted from the legendary KZ platform, but tuned for sharper performance. It made around 100 horsepower, but forget the dyno sheet. The Z1000R was about how it made you feel. Throttle response was immediate. Torque hit early, the sound was rowdy. It was like riding a riot through town. No fancy computers, no ABS, just two wheels, a fistful of throttle, and a whole lot of attitude. One owner described it like this: "Every time I take it out, it feels like I'm getting away with something illegal, like they never meant to sell this to normal people." And here is the best part: Kawasaki was just getting warmed up. Another bike on our list was bigger, meaner, and built for riders who believe touring should come with a side of muscle and a whole lot of wheelies. Get ready for this. It might be the most underrated monster of the 80s. Number 11, Suzuki GS1150E. Let's get one thing straight. In the 80s, if you wanted to flex on the street without buying a full-blown superbike, you bought a Suzuki GS1150E. This thing was not a toy. It was not a polite little standard. It was a heavyweight street fighter with the soul of a prize fighter. Released in the mid-80s, the GS1150E packed a 1,150cc air-cooled inline 4, making somewhere north of 112 horsepower. But forget the numbers. What mattered was how it delivered that power with glorious violence. Twist the throttle and the pavement started blurring. Roll on in second and the front end got light. This was a bike built for dominance. This machine was fast. But more than that, it was brutal in a straight line. It was not refined. It was not delicate. It was a motorcycle you respected, or it would spit you into a guardrail. Think of it as the motorcycle version of an old-school muscle car. Big engine, big attitude, not much to get in your way. One longtime owner described it like this: "I've had newer bikes with more tech, but none with more soul. This bike doesn't ride you gently. It slaps you on the back and tells you to hang on." And let's talk about reliability. These engines were nearly bulletproof. There are GS1150Es out there with over 180,000 miles and counting. Regular oil changes, valve checks, and you were golden. This was a bike that just kept running and running and running fast. Today, it is a cult classic, a bit rare, a bit rough around the edges. But if you can find one and you can handle it, the GS1150E is a time machine that will absolutely keep up with modern traffic and leave most of it behind. But if you've made it this far, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now get ready, because the next bikes are full-blown adventure setups. If you thought this bike was muscular, the next bike went boosted. Turbocharged madness is about to hit your screen in a way you are definitely not ready for. Number 10, Yamaha XJ 650 Turbo. Welcome to the wonderful world of the turbo experiment. A brief, glorious moment in the 80s when motorcycle manufacturers thought, what if we made bikes even more unhinged? And Yamaha's answer was the XJ 650 Turbo, a machine that looked sane but hid a wild secret under the tank. Launched in 1982, the Yamaha XJ 650 Turbo took the solid bones of the standard XJ and crammed a turbocharger onto its 649cc inline 4. What came out was a strange, bold, and surprisingly smooth ride that tried to bring turbo tech into the mainstream. On paper, the turbo boosted the engine to around 70 horsepower, but it was not just about the peak numbers, it was about the drama. The XJ Turbo had what you might call a lag-then-launch personality. You twisted the throttle. Nothing happened. You waited. Then all hell broke loose. The boost kicked in like a donkey with anger issues, and suddenly you were 3 gears deep into what felt like a rocket-powered chair. Styling-wise, it looked cool for the time. Angular fairings, a futuristic square headlight, and a beefy exhaust system to help push out that boosted fury. But despite all that, the XJ Turbo never really caught on. People were skeptical of the tech. It was expensive. And let's be honest, that turbo lag took some getting used to. One owner even said, "The first time the turbo hit, I laughed so hard I nearly missed my shift. I ride it now just for that one feeling." Think that was bold? The next machine came armed with 6 cylinders of pure Japanese overkill. And yes, it is exactly as bonkers as it sounds. Number 9, Honda CBX1000. In the land of motorcycles, some machines are fast, some are beautiful, some are collectible. And then there is the Honda CBX1000. Launched in 1978 and sold into the early 80s, the CBX1000 was Honda's glorious flex on the entire industry. It featured an engine that had never been seen on a production bike before, a 1,048 cubic centimeter inline 6. complete with double overhead camshaft and 24 valves. That's right, 6 cylinders, 24 valves, and the sound of a motorcycle god screaming through a chrome trumpet. What really seals the deal is the sound. Nothing on earth sounds like a CBX at full throttle. It's not a whine, it's not a roar. It's a glorious high RPM opera that makes your neighbors clap or call. If you think 6 cylinders is excessive, wait till you meet the next machine. A bike built not just for speed, but for ultimate riding luxury, decades before anyone cared about creature comforts. Number 8. Yamaha Venture Royale 1200. Before gold wings were ruling highways with dashboards that looked like airplane cockpits, and before modern adventure tours had heated seats and Bluetooth, there was the Yamaha Venture Royale 1200. The 80s answer to the question, what if we turned a limousine into a motorcycle? Debuting in 1983, this machine was Yamaha's first full-blown attempt at a luxury touring bike, and they did not hold back. At its heart was a 1,198cc liquid-cooled V4 engine that was buttery smooth and built to go the distance. With around 90 horsepower and more torque than a freight elevator, the Venture Royale could cruise for hundreds of miles without breaking a sweat. But what really set it apart was the comfort. Yamaha didn't just build a bike, they designed an experience. The Venture Royale came with electronic cruise control, an onboard computer, adjustable air suspension, and even a full audio system in the mid-80s. Let that sink in. Cars didn't even have half that gear. And here was a motorcycle turning into a mobile command center for the open road. It's not a flashy bike, it's not fast in the traditional sense, but it delivers effortless speed, old-school comfort, and timeless durability. And the styling? It looks like the 80s wrapped in chrome and leather, exactly how a luxury touring bike should. Nowadays, the Venture Royale is a bit of a hidden gem. You can still find them at reasonable prices if you know where to look. And if you're the kind of rider who values comfort, reliability, and looking like the CEO of the highway, this machine still delivers. But what comes next is no limousine. The next bike was born to fight, and it still strikes fear into modern sport bikes. Number 7. Kawasaki GPZ900R. Back in 1984, the motorcycle world changed forever. That was the year Kawasaki dropped the GPZ900R, a bike so fast, so sleek, and so ahead of its time that it felt like it came from the future. And in many ways, it did. You might know it better today by another name, the first ever Ninja. This was the bike that launched the Ninja brand and put Kawasaki on top of the sport bike world. But it was not just marketing hype. The GPZ900R was the fastest production bike in the world when it hit the scene. It could hit 151 miles per hour right out of the box. In the mid-80s, that was mind-blowing. At the heart of this speed demon was a 900 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled inline 4 with double overhead camshaft and 16 valves. It made around 115 horsepower and delivered that power smoothly through a 6-speed gearbox. But it was not just the engine. The GPZ was the first mass-produced bike with a frame-mounted fairing, improving aerodynamics and stability at high speed. It handled shockingly well for a bike this fast. Riders praised its comfort too. Unlike modern race replicas, the GPZ was actually rideable for long distances. You could take it across states and still walk the next day. It was the rare combination of touring comfort and track speed, something that still feels special today. Today, clean examples are going up in value fast. Collectors want them, riders want them, and the ones who still ride them, they smile every time they walk into the garage. But if you think this Ninja was scary, wait until you see the next beast. The next bike was a giant cruiser with a secret, a machine that proved muscle was not just for sport bikes. Number 6. Suzuki Intruder 1400. In a decade drenched in neon, synth pop, and sport bike wars, Suzuki took a hard left turn straight into the world of long forks, fat torque, and unapologetic cruising. The result was the Suzuki Intruder 1400. A bike so raw, so defiant, it didn't just ride past you, it rumbled through your chest. Launched in 1987, the Intruder 1400 was Suzuki's answer to the American V-twin formula. But they didn't just mimic Harley. No, they went their own way, dropping in a 1360 air oil-cooled V-twin, tuned not for redline madness, but for sheer earth-moving torque. It made around 72 horsepower, but numbers don't tell the whole story. Crack the throttle, and the Intruder moves. No downshifting, no rev hunting, just one long, muscular surge, delivered through a shaft drive so low maintenance, some owners swear they've never touched it. And speaking of owners, these things last. Riders still put down over 100,000 miles on them without flinching. One guy said, "Bought mine in 1991, never sold it, still ride it, still scares newer bikes off the line." The Intruder 1400 didn't play nice. It didn't chase trends. It didn't want to be European or race ready or tech heavy. It just wanted to cruise fast, growl loud, and look damn good doing it. And you know what? It did exactly that. Number 5, Benelli SE 900. All right, let's shift gears and countries. Because while Japan was dominating the 80s with bulletproof 4s and angry twins, Benelli, yes, the Italian brand with a name like a secret agent, decided they would bring out something that sounds like an F1 car and feels like a rolling opera. Enter the Benelli SE 900. SE means 6, and that's exactly what this gorgeous beast had. 6 cylinders of symphonic madness. This wasn't just a motorcycle, it was a statement. A war cry with chrome pipes and Italian leather. And when you started it, it didn't purr, it sang. Introduced in the late 70s and bleeding into the early 80s, the SE 900 took the earlier SE 750 design and said, "You know what this needs? More everything. More displacement, more torque, more horsepower, and more presence." The inline 6 made around 80 horsepower, which may not sound wild today, but back then, it was a very big deal. Especially coming from a bike that looked like it belonged in a movie about futuristic Italian detectives. The sound alone was worth the price of entry. A cascading, exotic howl that turned heads a full city block away. And with 6 chrome pipes sticking out like an exhaust organ, people noticed. And the rarity, off the charts. You do not see many SE 900s rolling around today. Those who own them, they treat them like royalty. One proud owner said, "Every time I ride it, someone offers to buy it. I just laugh. This bike's coming with me to the grave." Reliability is solid if, and it's a big if, you keep it well maintained. This is Italian engineering from the 80s after all. But treat it right and it will reward you with a lifetime of smiles and unfiltered attention. Think that was rare? The next bike is so unusual it has 2 drive shafts, a V-twin, and a cult following that might just be right. Get ready for number 4. This one's a little weird, a little genius, and completely unforgettable. Number 4, Honda CX500 Turbo. Welcome to one of the weirdest, most innovative, and flat-out boldest bikes to ever roll off a Honda factory line, the Honda CX500 Turbo. This wasn't just a motorcycle, it was a statement piece from the future, delivered early in 1982. Here's what you got. A 500cc transverse V-twin, liquid-cooled, fuel-injected, with a computer-controlled turbocharger. That's right. Back when most bikes were still figuring out carburetors, Honda gave us a boost-fed, tech-heavy, shaft-driven middleweight that looked like it was designed by NASA engineers after too much coffee. The turbocharged V-twin pushed out 82 horsepower, which was more than many 1,000cc bikes of the time. And thanks to Honda's pioneering PGM-FI system, throttle response was smooth for a turbo bike, and power delivery was consistent once you learned to ride around the deliciously dramatic turbo lag. This wasn't a high-revving screamer, it was a mid-range missile. And once the boost kicked in, it delivered a shove in the back that felt like a time jump. 1 second you were cruising, the next you were launched into traffic ahead of everyone else, wondering what just happened. Visually, oh, it turned heads. With its angular fairing, pop-up style headlight, and bold turbo decals, it looked more like a cyberpunk weapon than a commuter. Riders say you still can't park one without someone walking up and asking, "What is that thing?" Comfort was surprisingly good. Honda didn't skimp on rideability. The seat was plush, the riding position was relaxed, and the suspension soaked up road imperfections like a pro. It even had shaft drive, which meant low maintenance and no chain to lube. A gift to anyone who rides hard and hates cleanup. Reliability, way better than you'd expect from something this complicated. One rider proudly claimed their CX500 Turbo crossed 100,000 miles before the first major service. Not bad for a bike with more sensors than the Space Shuttle. But Honda only made it for 1 year. Then it was gone. Too expensive, too soon, too bold. Today it's a rare collector's dream and a cult icon. Think this was high-tech? You haven't seen anything yet. The next three will surely blow your mind away. Completely. Stand by. Hold on to your horses or whatever bike you're on. These are the legends among legends. Let's go. Number 3, Suzuki RZ500 Gamma. Let's get one thing clear. Most bikes claim to have race DNA, but the Suzuki RZ500 Gamma didn't need to claim anything. It was a race bike, just toned down enough to be legal, but still wild enough to scare most riders who dared twist the throttle too far. Released in 1985, the RZ500 was Suzuki's answer to one simple question. What if we just gave people the closest thing to a GP machine and saw what happened? What happened, friends, was glorious mayhem. Underneath the sleek, aggressive bodywork sat a 4-cylinder, 2-stroke, 500cc engine laid out in a square formation just like Suzuki's actual Grand Prix race bikes. This thing made around 95 horsepower in a bike that weighed under 400 pounds. Do the math. That's a power-to-weight ratio that would still slap modern middleweights around. The power band? Oh, it was hilarious and terrifying. Below 6,000 RPM, you could sip coffee. Above 7,000, the engine screamed and the world blurred. It didn't pull, it exploded. Riders say the first time the valves opened and the power hit full tilt, they either laughed maniacally or screamed into their helmets, or both. Handling? Razor sharp. The RZ turned in like it was reading your mind. It ran on a light alloy frame, had high-spec suspension for its day, and the brakes were actually capable of saving you from your own stupidity. One rider, grinning through his words, said, "You don't ride the Gamma, you hang on and hope it forgives you." Reliability? Look, it's a 2-stroke. It needs care. It needs patience. It needs oil. But riders who maintain them right say they're solid. They're not daily commuters, they're weekend adrenaline events. And the rarity? Off the charts. These bikes were never sold in the US officially. Most found today are imports, which means when you show up at a bike night on one, everyone stops and stares because they know exactly what it is and what it can do. But here's the twist. The RZ500 was so good, so close to Suzuki's actual GP machines, that it actually got banned from certain racing classes. It was the bike that scared the competition and got slapped with regulations just for existing. Now, if that's how Suzuki played the game, imagine what happens when Yamaha tries to one-up them with a V4 rocket that screams like a demon and rides like a dream. Number 2, Yamaha RZV500R. If you thought Suzuki's RZ500 was wild, then hold on to your helmet, because Yamaha looked at that and said, "Let's go even crazier." What they unleashed was the Yamaha RZV500R, a motorcycle so deeply rooted in Grand Prix engineering that it shouldn't have been street legal at all. Released in 1984, this was Yamaha's full-throttle, no-compromise answer to the sport bike wars. It was based directly on their YZR 500 GP racer, the same kind of machine ridden by legends like Kenny Roberts. And they weren't messing around. The centerpiece, a 500cc, 2-stroke, liquid-cooled V4 engine, complete with Yamaha's patented YPVS, Yamaha Power Valve System. It churned out a blistering 88 horsepower in a bike that weighed barely over 380 pounds. That's not just quick, that's lightning in metal form. Handling, razor sharp, brakes, powerful for the time, and the feedback, like holding a live wire. It demanded skill, respect, and nerve. One mistake, and it would remind you who's boss. But when you got it right, the feeling was euphoric. Riders today still obsess over the RZV. One longtime owner said, "I've ridden everything. Nothing comes close to the way this bike makes me feel. It's raw. It's real. It's like riding emotion." Maintenance is a commitment, It's a two-stroke with old-school parts, so it needs love and attention. But owners gladly give it, because what they get back is an unfiltered, high-voltage riding experience modern bikes can't match. And here's the thing. Yamaha knew it was special. They didn't make many. The RZV500R was exclusive to Japan, and even the export version, the RD500LC, was rare. That makes every surviving example today a highly prized piece of motorcycle history. Think that's peak 80s. Well, the #1 spot belongs to a machine that didn't just redefine its category, it created a legacy so powerful, even today's bikes still chase its shadow. Get ready. #1 is not just a legend, it's a revolution on two wheels. #1, Honda VFR 750 Interceptor. If you asked every mechanic, every sport touring lifer, and every old-school rider to name the most bulletproof Japanese motorcycle from the 80s, one that still turns heads, still gets respect, and still eats miles like candy, they'd probably all say the same thing. Honda VFR 750 Interceptor. This was not just a bike. This was a reputation builder, a redemption arc, a comeback story that turned Honda's darkest moment into one of its brightest engineering triumphs. Because before the VFR, Honda had a problem. The early VF series had camshaft issues. Riders were losing faith. Critics were sharpening their pens. So Honda went back to the lab and said, let's build something so over-engineered, so indestructible, so damn perfect that no one ever questions us again. And they did. What rolled out of the factory was the VFR 750, a liquid-cooled DOHC, 4-valve per cylinder, fuel-efficient V4 masterpiece that cranked out around 75 to 80 horsepower and revved smooth, clean, and beautifully. It made power everywhere. Low-end grunt, mid-range pull, top-end scream. It did it all. And the sound? That V4 note is still music to any real rider's ears, like a mix of a small block V8 and a sport bike howl. It's addictive. Riders have literally kept VFRs for decades just for that sound. But the engine was only part of it. The VFR's aluminum twin-spar frame, the refined suspension, and its balanced geometry made it one of the best handling street bikes of the decade. It felt solid, precise, confident. You could ride it to work. You could ride it across 3 states. You could take it to the track, and it would eat it all up without breaking a sweat. Brakes, dual discs up front, solid feedback. Comfort, way better than most sport bikes. Reliability? This is the part where it gets crazy. There are riders with 200,000 plus miles on their VFRs. Some say 500,000 is within reach. These bikes just do not die. Regular oil changes, valve checks, and they'll run like a Swiss watch forever. One rider wrote, I bought mine in 1986, still have it, still commute on it, still grin every single time I hear that V4 come alive. They were totally right. Click the video that is coming on the screen. Right now, subscribe to stay engaged with my content.